Anyone familiar with my content will know that I don't do infant death cases very often. Not because it triggers me, but because I care for all of you and I know that it triggers many of you. But that's not to say that I should ignore such cases. I'm just selective about which ones to cover and where lessons desperately need learning. In those instances, then I will shine a light on certain cases. And today's case is no exception to that. I will give a trigger warning right here and now for cruelty to a very young child. If this will trigger you, then your well-being is far more important than the witterings of a fat Welshman. So put your needs first. And with all of that said, we will go to Ohio and to 2023 to look at a case so abhorrent and unconscionable that it really does defy belief. This is the sickening case of Jailyn Candelario, and this is Murder of Crows. Cleveland is a city in the US state of Ohio and is the county seat of Cuyahoga County. Located along the southern shore of Lake Erie, it is situated across the Canadian border and approximately 60 miles or 97 kilometers west of the Ohio-Pennsylvania state line. Cleveland is the most populous city on Lake Erie and second most populous city in Ohio, with a population of 372,624 as of the 2020 census. Cleveland was founded in 1796 near the mouth of the Cuyahoga River as part of the Connecticut Western Reserve in modern-day northeast Ohio by General Moses Cleveland, after whom the city was named. The city's location on the river and the lake shore allowed it to grow into a major commercial and industrial metropolis by the late 19th century, attracting large numbers of both immigrants and migrants. It was among the top 10 largest US cities by population for much of the 20th century, a period that saw the development of the city's cultural institutions. By the 1960s, Cleveland's economy began to slow down as manufacturing declined and suburbanization occurred. Cleveland is a port city connected to the Atlantic Ocean via the St. Lawrence Seaway. Today, its economy relies on diverse sectors that include higher education, manufacturing, financial services, healthcare, and biomedicals. The city serves as the headquarters of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Helpful being in Cleveland, that really, isn't it? As well as several major companies. Designated as a global city by the Globalization and World Cities Research Network, Cleveland is home to several major cultural institutions, including the Cleveland Museum of Art, the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, the Cleveland Orchestra, the Cleveland Public Library, Playhouse Square, and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, as well as Case Western Reserve University. Known as the Forest City, among many other nicknames, Cleveland serves as the center of the Cleveland Metro Parks Nature Reserve System. The city's major league professional sports teams include the Cleveland Browns of American football in the NFL, the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA with basketball, and the Cleveland Guardians, Major League Baseball stalwart. But our reasons for visiting today are about as far removed from culture as can ever be imagined. As with many such cases, the wider awareness of the case begins with a frantic 911 call.
Friday, June 16, 2023, 07:47 and 26 seconds. Cleveland Police Dispatcher, public call, do you need police, fire, or EMS? Cleveland Police, do you need police, fire, or EMS? What's that?
But it doesn't take long at all for first responders and investigators to realize that the narrative given is so far from the truth that it has a different postcode. On the morning of June the 16th, 2023, a 911 dispatcher in Cleveland, Ohio, received a panicked call from a woman asking them to send someone quickly. Something was wrong with her baby. First responders would later describe what they encountered inside the home as something straight out of a nightmare. The woman who had placed the call for help, 32-year-old Jailyn Candelario, told members of the police and fire department's rescue squad that she had awakened to find that her 16-month-old daughter, Jailyn, had stopped breathing. Sure enough, scary enough, if that's what happened. But an examination of the toddler, who was far beyond resuscitation, immediately cast doubt on her story. It was clear to paramedics that the child had been dead for longer than just a few hours. In their estimation, she had passed away 24 to 48 hours prior. To their horror, when they opened her mouth, they saw that it was filled with human excrement. A look around the home had given police and paramedics a grim insight into Jailyn's last days on Earth. Though the baby was dressed in a clean outfit, it appeared that she hadn't been bathed in days. The 2-foot by 3-foot playpen, where she had obviously been confined for a lengthy period of time, was soaked in urine and feces. Fuck. Just fuck. As Jailyn's body was taken to the morgue, the homicide unit was brought in to deal with her mother. After being informed that her account didn't add up, Crystal broke down and told them that she had been away on vacation since June the 6th. Yes, you heard me right. This so-called mother decided that it would be fine to go on hollybobs without arranging any care whatsoever for her infant child. Rather than finding a sitter for her daughter or bringing her daughter along with her, she had put her in the pack and play playpen, along with a few bottles of milk, and left her to fend for herself till she got back. Showing a shocking lack of common sense and, I don't know, maternal fucking instincts, Crystal claimed that she thought Jailyn would be all right. What the actual living fuck is wrong with this woman? She had left her alone before, albeit only for a couple of days, and she had survived. So in her mind, a baby who was barely a year old would be fine for a week or so, without food, water, clean nappies, or attention of any kind. Fucking hell. Crystal explained that she had gone to Puerto Rico for a few days with a male friend, After that, she had stopped over in Detroit for a while before returning home. In the 10 days she was gone, she had never once asked anyone to check in on her daughter. What she had found time to do, though, funnily enough, was post pictures of herself on social media, strolling on the beach and smiling from ear to ear. How fucking self-absorbed can you be to smile so easily and effortlessly while knowing that your baby is home alone and not in the Macaulay Culkin manner? The mind fucking boggles. Crystal was arrested and charged with aggravated murder and child endangerment. Instead of taking full responsibility for her wrongdoing, she had blamed her actions on mental issues, citing depression and anxiety as the root causes of her poor judgment. Christ on a bike. People who refuse to take responsibility for their mistakes will always be incredibly dangerous. But, I digress. What do I know? And I warn you now, the following pathology findings are abhorrent by any measure. Consider yourselves duly warned. The medical examiner noted that Jailyn was extremely emaciated at the time of autopsy. Her eyes had receded into their sockets, and her lips were cracked from a lack of fluids. Excrement was found under her tiny fingernails and inside her mouth, indicating that she had eaten her own waste in a vain attempt to fill her empty belly. Though it was painfully clear that she had been starved, her cause of death was ultimately determined to be dehydration. When neighbours were interviewed later, a few said that they had heard Jailyn crying, sometimes all through the night, but hadn't intervened. Since Crystal hadn't told them that she was going away, they had assumed that she must have been at home with the baby. One neighbour recalled that she had agreed to watch Jailyn for a weekend a few months earlier. When Crystal didn't pick her up as scheduled, the woman had reached out to her, but her calls and texts had gone unanswered. Six weeks later, an unapologetic Crystal finally showed up to collect her baby, who by then was calling the neighbour Mama, because the neighbour had probably been more of a mother than Crystal ever had. The ring cam of a nearby home had picked up the sound of Jailyn's haunting screams during the time that her mother was sunbathing in Puerto Rico with a man who is assumed to be her boyfriend.
On the Ring doorbell that on 6/9/2023 at around 1:04 a.m. in the morning that you hear this child crying.
The fact that her cries were loud enough to be heard down the block, and yet no one came to check on her, is just another layer of unbelievability to this tragic case. Perhaps yet another example of the bystander effect. But it is better, in my humble opinion, for 20 people to call in wrongly than no one to call in rightly. However, having said all of that, there is only one person to blame here, as we know. Foregoing the formalities of a trial, Crystal pleaded guilty as charged on February the 22nd, 2024. At sentencing, her parents, who had been in Ecuador at the time, with her other daughter, 7-year-old Amaya, begged for leniency. I'm sorry, what? Leniency? You lose virtually all chance of leniency when you accept the blessed burden of becoming a parent. But I digress. They maintained that Crystal was ill-equipped to care for a child alone, which is why they lent a hand whenever possible. Since they had been out of the country at the time, they had been unaware that she had left Jailyn unattended to go about her fun times. They had also echoed their daughter's assertion that her crippling anxiety had clouded her judgment. Having gone off her meds, which she was prone to do, she hadn't given any thought to how her baby would survive without adequate nourishment for 10 days. Photos of Crystal enjoying her days of fun in the sun were displayed in front of the packed courtroom, lest we forget the dichotomy in the circumstances of the mother and daughter. It was lost on no one that she dined out at fancy restaurants and drank fine wines, while at the same time her baby daughter was trapped in an empty house eating her own shit. Sorry to be blunt, but that's the only way that I can say it. When the lead detective in the case, T.J. Powell, took the stand, he asked to read a poem he had written for Jailyn. His voice breaking with emotion, he had spoken of the impact that her death had on the strangers who cared for her more in death than the individual who should have loved her above all others had in life.
Assigned to the Cleveland Police Homicide Unit. I was the lead detective investigator on this case, and I can honestly say, Your Honor, in my 17-year career as a Cleveland police officer, this by far is the most horrific case I've ever had to investigate. Now, I've been a detective for 10 years. First and foremost, I want to thank the entire homicide unit, the entire Cleveland Police Department, prosecutor's office. As you see, we're here, we're Jailyn's voice. Unfortunately, there's no family on our side, but we're her family. I wrote a short poem, just something in commemoration of Jailyn's life. J is for the justice that'll be received today. A is for the angel wings she earned on that joyful day. I is for the incremental repetition, build up of suspense for an innocent bystander's death that clearly makes no sense. L is for the lack of love while alone for 11 days. Y is for a young life that was taken away. N is for new eternal life Jailyn gained on that day. No child should ever have to die this way. Jailyn's life truly mattered. Unfortunately, she died trying to survive off of her own urine and fecal matter.
Forensic pathologist Elizabeth Mooney had teared up as she recounted not only the physical pain Jailyn went through, but also the agonizing separation anxiety the toddler would have experienced as she waited hour after hour, day after day, for the mother who had apparently forgotten that she existed. There are no words. I run out of superlatives. What a fucking evil bitch. Anywho, when it was Crystal's turn to speak, she had once again reminded everyone present of her struggles with mental illness. Poor baby.
Not trying to justify my actions.
Pero nadie sabe cuánto yo estaba sufriendo.
But nobody knew how much I was suffering.
Dios y mi hija me han perdonado.
God and my daughter have forgiven me.
She ended by saying that God and my daughter have forgiven me. Have they, fuckers like? Neither have forgiven you, you deluded cowbag. After taking everyone's statements into consideration, Judge Brendan Sheehan sentenced Crystal to life in prison with no chance of parole.
You committed the ultimate act of betrayal, leaving your baby terrified, alone, unprotected, to suffer What I heard was the most gruesome death imaginable. You left your baby, Jailyn, trapped in a pack and play without food and water for 10 days. This wasn't simply an oversight. I'm going to sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
Addressing her directly, he had spoken aloud what everyone in the courtroom was thinking. Just as you didn't let Jailyn out of her confinement until she died, so too should you spend the rest of your life in a cell without freedom. Well said, Your Honor. Well fucking said, and amen to that.
Tonight, as we hear from a mother who went on vacation, leaving her 1-year-old daughter at home in a playpen to starve to death. An emotional day in court here that ended with a judge sentencing Jailyn Candelario to life in prison without the possibility of parole.
That judge calling her actions the ultimate act of betrayal. Matt Rascone has more from inside the courtroom.
We're here on a very tragic case.
Prosecutors, the judge, and investigators described it as one of the most horrific cases.
She is taking a suitcase and now leaving Cuyahoga County.
Then 30 vacationing in Puerto Rico.
She was a mother. She got a title that means something in this world.
While her 16-month-old daughter, Jailyn, was trapped in a pack and play with her feces for 10 days, starving to death.
This baby loved her mother. She needed her mother, and her mother betrayed her.
When Candelario finally returned home, she called 911 in a panic.
She didn't want this, to happen. You could hear that.
Her attorney says she was dealing with depression and anxiety without treatment. Through an interpreter, Candelario said she's asked for forgiveness.
I'm not trying to justify my actions.
Pero nadie sabe cuánto yo estaba sufriendo.
But nobody knew how much I was suffering.
Dios y mi hija me han perdonado.
God and my daughter have forgiven me.
Prosecutors said after finding her, Candelario changed her daughter's clothes and lied to police to hide her crime, then continued to talk about her fun vacation while in jail.
You committed the ultimate act of betrayal.
Judge Brendan Sheehan described the bond between mother and child as the most pure and sacred, and then handed down the maximum sentence.
You should spend the rest of your life in a cell without freedom. The only difference will be that prison will at least feed you.
Just a disturbing story. All of the investigators impacted by this case were inside the courtroom for Jailyn. Candelario's parents also spoke in court, lamenting the death of their granddaughter while also standing by their daughter. Candelario is also a mom to a 7-year-old daughter. It's unclear where she was while Candelario was on vacation. Christy.
It is one of the saddest things.
Yeah.
Matt Rascone, thank you.
For those wondering why Jailyn's father didn't step in at some point, since there is no mention of him anywhere in any of the research or documentation, it is presumed that he was not a part of his daughter's life. Just another missing piece in the jigsaw of horror that the girl had to endure. And that was the devastating and clearly avoidable death of Jailyn Candelario. This poor baby was not the first, and unfortunately will not be the last to suffer and die due to their so-called parent or guardian being so incredibly deluded and selfish that they get left behind and forgotten. But obviously every one of those babies that become angels far, far too soon should be remembered for the cherished infants that they were, and the people of immense value they would have and should have become. It absolutely boggles my mind that there are people in the world who can treat our most vulnerable in this way. But as true crime followers, we know it happens all the time. But as right-thinking people, it still feels very, very alien to us. But all we can do is understand that such people do exist, and be aware that their actions can be far-reaching, as well as having wide-reaching ripple effects. This video is dedicated to beautiful little Jailyn, this tragic baby, and indeed the thousands like poor Jailyn that came before and no doubt will come after, at the hands of the person they should have been able to trust beyond all others. I send love to all of those affected by this case, and of course any similar cases. Help is out there. You just need to ask. Thank you for watching another episode of Murder of Crows. Please like, share and subscribe and whatnot if you could, as it really helps me to reach more people. But with that said, I'm Steve, this fluff ball is Samson, and we will see you when we see you.
Say that you're ready, but you won't like it, you say